Alright, so I figured I'd record some of what I'm doing right now. So here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out if I want to use Oliver's script to some degree. I started renaming some stuff in it. But this is for specifically a hash table. So these little keys and the type name is going to work, but some of the sub key type stuff that needs to be modified. But you know, there's a case to be made here that this might break when you try to use it on something that's not a hash table, even if you do use the correct terms. Because guess what? PS custom objects, they usually have this is how you have to figure out if you want to build them dynamically. You have to do something like this: open up an empty array. And now the table is called mod, and what I want to do is this here. So the NP, I like to give myself some shortcuts. So like NP is no property. In fact, what I'll do is I'll take these and bring them down. I could very well just use a much simpler approach than what I'm doing right now, but there's a reason I'm doing it this way. Because if I can manage to make a commandlet out of this or something of that nature, then it won't matter what the actual tags are specifically, because I'll be able to include that in the commandlet. Or like, you know, let's say export start layout then includes a commandlet that exports the taskbar as well. So if I were to go into the registry right now, I don't know if anyone sees that little flash right there. Well, I thought that was funny. I went to that. Nothing there. Boom. Oh, that's rather helpful. Huh. But anyway, yeah, I like this. Andrew Hulshult. I don't know. It's pretty cool soundtrack there. I like to listen to it. I asked him for permission to use it in a video once this is all done. I think it would be pretty sweet. But anyway, what I was going to say is... there was a suggestion that was made to me, and I started looking around in this area here. So like, if I want to export the start menu, that's already a commandlet, but if I want to export the taskbar or everything that's on it, how do I do that? So if I right click this and I say pin to taskbar, then the Reddit editor will be there. Or it'll stay there even after I close that. See? Same thing with that. I'm not going to close that because obviously whatevs. But I didn't pin that, and then say pin that. So suffice to say, it's not really. It doesn't seem to be very easy to find where it's pinning these two. Or let's say, you know, I could pin all this stuff to my current user, but if I want to apply this to the local machine policy instead, well, then that becomes a slightly different matter where I have to go, instead of current user, I have to go to the local machine. So here's the difference between current user and local machine. Local machine is like scoped for the whole machine. So if you make a new user, it's going to pull from that machine variable. It's sort of like how Linux will have like users and groups and, you know, permissions and scopes and things of that nature. It's exactly what it is, but the way the registry works is programs can write to this stuff. So like if I install Google Chrome, it'll install some stuff here. It might install like shortcuts and cookies here, but it could also, those things that would be put there could be pulling from there. I won't get into all of the nitty gritty of how that works because the registry is kind of a pain in the rear end. But anyway, what I'm working on right now is a way to build. Here, I'll show you. Oh, by the way, let me go over some of the changes that I made with the logic I made the other day. So, I made a video the other day, and I used this redundant schema declarative, and named it that. And then I had all the programs, which are all the default, by the way. It'll run through that array, and then at the end of the array, it'll add the .lnk at the end. But then also, I figured, well, you know, I'm kind of running through a loop multiple times. I don't know if you want to go back and look at the video I made the other day, but you can start to concatenate some of these equations together. So for instance, prefix, I probably wouldn't want to concat that until I have the output of that, because then it won't synchronize with programs or anything right there. But also the suffix here. Remember how I had another variable? Well, it was called prefix, but it's actually more of a suffix because this is the beginning of that string there. I had this tied to a variable named AX, but you can actually start to, you know, concatenate some of this stuff and then get away with an array declarative right there. So what that is going to do is going to select that plus that 0, and then 1 is going to select that plus that. Obviously, that is either that or that, depending on whether this is 0 or 1. So it'll be all users profile, app data, app data, app data, all users profile, app data, user profile, app data. So that's what that means. But also, it's making it a count of 9 so that it can synchronize with that and that and that. And rather than to run through the whole loop a bunch of times, I can run through it all right there. So let me show you how that works. Say output. Bam. So it's showing correctly now. And what I like to do is once I have, oh, actually, it's not putting that part in quotes. I won't get into that right this minute. Actually, why don't I do this? Why don't I do that? Alright, so it's no. I'm put it here. Alright, so now it's putting it in the right spot, but then, darn it, it's not closing the thing, so I have to do this. Alright, so now it's showing correctly, I believe. Sure, it looks correct right now. But I guess, you know, at the very tail end of when I go to output this, I could use that same trick that I showed off, where at the very end when I have a variable like mod, I can say right now it's a PS custom object. Let me show you let me show you how much of a pain in the neck PS custom object is compared to a hash table. So the reason you might use a ordered hash table or a regular hash table is to make things easier on yourself and to work with keys and values, but it's just as frustrating as working with PS custom object. So here's how PS custom object works. I'll hit that, right? But yeah, so that's what you're dealing with right there. If I want the name of it, then I just do this. right? And then I want to output that to an array because I want to concatenate the value. I'm trying to would help if I had the original template here. I've got it in my other window. I'm just trying to find it. Trying to find it. Cause yeah. Damn, that's the wrong one. Yeah, that's it. Tie it to a variable just to, damn it, still can't do that. I did fix this the other day after the video. All I did was just put the, I don't know, I had it working and then I broke it, and then I tried to make it work in a broken way instead of just using what I already did that worked. And sometimes sometimes you'll do that when you're programming. You'll be like, what the heck, I can't seem to get it working. And then, you know, should you have been lucky enough to have been recording it like I did, then I can see exactly what I did wrong and why what I tried to do didn't work. All I wound up doing was just damn you. I guess I gotta do this. I think that's gonna make it a string though, rather than an array. Yes, damn it. Oh crap, I forgot I'm gonna have that same situation I had before. Guitar. Used to play a lot of guitar. Oh, yeah, might want to put the commas like I was suggesting yesterday. So some of this stuff is a little bit nuanced as you get deeper in all of this. And I'm using my left hand to do this. That is my guitar hand, but the right hand does the picking. So, all right, this should. All right, so now it's selecting the lines and whatnot. So now I want to replace the quotes. So now it's got single quotes in there. But and I could have done this in the same fell swoop, but didn't think of it. I want to add the quotes back in because then I have to kind of go through and redo what I just did on the end of everything. So what I'll do is gotta make that D variable retype them into array. Oh crap, I gotta make a freaking tertiary array. You know, I've never tried this before. I'm going to give it a shot. Seemed to work. Cool. Alright. So now I replaced everything with single quotes on the inside and double quotes on the outside. So visually, you don't see much of a difference until like you're specifically looking at a spot where they're there. And of course, I forgot to, well, instead of using the commas, I guess I could just do that. And now it'll show up correctly, I think. Yeah, okay. So it did work. Instead of using the commas, you could use that. It doesn't work in every scenario. Sometimes you kind of need to, I don't know, do the things I've been telling you to try to do. But okay, let me go ahead and copy and paste all this stuff. And now when I get to these lines, let's say output. Boom. Well, let's just call it null so that you can see that things are working as expected. So schema, that's correct. Programs, all right, and then prefix, and then suffix, and then output. Boom. So what these three loops are doing is splitting the work. So those are all the programs. Those are all the links. And rather than have to copy that a bunch of times, like the list you were just looking at did. Now it's programmatically re-including all the stuff. And now you could make the case that you could do all the logic within this, but it's kind of like it's not exactly necessary to try to do all that, especially I don't know, you could do that. I'm not against anyone trying to do that, but anyway, so yes, new array will bring up null right now. As soon as I run that, bam. Ooh, there it is. Correct. So now I have all that done. I can replace all the quotes again. So now it just re-injected the single or the double quotes everywhere. So now I can take this and paste it, and it'll be the same exact data that I started with, I think. If I can find it. One way you could find the if it's the same exact data, I guess. get the hash code. It's 304410006. I have to do more work to do it the way I want it to. I guess just a visual inspection may have to do for now. So that's why I just output looks correct to me. I want to make sure that that's not what I oh. Okay, what X is working. So it looks like, oh, okay. So that stuff is not exactly the same. So I messed up there. That's the original. Accessories, administrative tools, system. Yeah, I ended up just moving that around. Actually, I remember that now. Damn it. Only because it made it simpler to have to put it there instead of having to type that again. It's not going to really make too much of a difference where the icons are because they're going to work. But I mean, I could always just change, I could change that here. Let's see that 0 1 2 3 4 5 7 6 8. I don't think it's going to work. Or maybe it will. 0111 01001. Zero one 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 01001. Okay, so that's correct. So now it should be able to export it. It should be right. Certainly putting it in the right spot now. Now the file is exactly the same. Okay, so I can go ahead and close that. So yeah, I don't know why it keeps changing that back. Now it becomes a question of like, do I want to like, I don't know, do I want to try to do a for loop there to re-include all that? I mean, I guess you could, but I think it's 6 a dozen one way, half a dozen the other. You're still going to have to output it to something, but let's say I did that. That way, less lines, you know. Yeah. Might want to do that. So bam, there it is. Let's say I wanted to just export it already, or just save it somewhere on the computer. So I could say, strangely enough, I don't even need to have the variable name. Could just do it like this and then add it to it from manual or what have you. say that I want to set the content, right? So set content. It's going to be home, desktop, start, layout to, yeah, we'll overwrite that one. Now, like how it does that. I mean, IntelliSense is great sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes it's like, you ever had to like text somebody and you're like saying one word and then you send the text message thinking that the word was going to come out correctly, but it totally sends a different letter or a different word. You're like, no. And then you start typing it in again. And then you hit the send button and it changes it to the other freaking word again. You're like, all right, I sent 2 messages where it was the wrong information. So I'm going to type it real slow this time. And then you get to a point where you are at the last letter. And then you type in that letter. And then you hit the send button. And sometimes what'll happen is it'll still change the damn word, like in the process of sending it. It's not always the case, but you know, then you have to add that word to the dictionary. It's like, no, I'm trying to type this other word here. So here, let's add it to the dictionary so that you never ask me again, phone. But hey, look, anytime that you add a word to your own dictionary, that's something that's glossed over when you go to, I don't know, reinstall everything on your phone or device. Same thing with going through all the settings in the registry and making sure that everything is the way that it was, minus the problems on the other end of the process. So that's, I mean, that's kind of like a humorous point that I'm making here, but it's definitely relevant because that kind of falls under the similar scope of making sure that all your settings are the same and that things don't frustrate you. Oh, you know, autocorrect is it's useful, but sometimes it's a super pain in the neck or the nutsack, like I said before. But anyway, yeah, so I want to add this to that. Like I said, you could totally not even need that and then just put this like up here. And bam, one less variable. Now you're still using a variable there, but you know, I don't know. Not entirely sure it's going to work because the value is there and it's piped there. Well, let's see how it goes. So I'm going to make sure it's deleted. And that one too. Why not? I want to make sure that's correct. Oh yeah, it's going to come out all weird because I had the window shrunk. Zoom out a little bit. Alright. Let's go ahead and do it. There it is. Look at that. So that's, I think that's pretty cool. That, you know, simply rearranging some stuff and then, hey, where'd, that modification go that I made? Oh, okay. So I haven't put this in the right one. Now, Sometimes it is easier to tie things to a variable, and then, you know, after you have the variable, then you do this. Because let's say that I wanted to add this on the end of this here, then I have to add another encapsulation there, and then do this, which I don't think this is going to work, but I want to try it out. Yeah, what do you know? It did work. But I mean, you know, you got all these like, hey, I'm opening up that, I'm opening up that, I'm opening up that. And yeah, I mean, you can do that. There's no objection to you being able to do that, but that's kind of redundant. So I don't know. I guess it's a matter of preference at this point, because you sure as hell I didn't think you could do this. Yeah, no, you can't. So, great idea, Michael. Doesn't work. Now what I could do, could try to encapsulate it there. And look at that. That did work. Doesn't always work. That one didn't work. Alright, so let me talk about why you would want to use a semicolon there. So if I use a plus sign there, here's what happens. Bam. See? I could use that. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it never works. Sometimes it never works. Sort of. Kind of. Maybe. Other times it definitely always not ever works. I guess. Right, pull this out. So this is where I spend a lot of time trying to be considerate for my sanity, rather than, you know, recreating all this logic just because, hey, guess what? I wanted to find a way to take that line out completely. So I mean, yeah, you can make the case that that's pretty trivial, Michael. You could just, you know, tie the variable to there and that and the other thing. But, I mean, I make the case that, you know, the simpler you can reduce the instructions, it's probably worth trying a couple of ideas out. So, that idea specifically, that's how you learn, hey, that's pretty dumb, Michael. So, then, just continue on. And then, I'll say, guess what? I kind of wanted to still do that. And I can do that. So I'm gonna do that because I'm a top-notch, I don't know, something. Anyway, let's put that there. So let me tell you about how this works. Let me split the line so you can visually see the difference here. When you use a semicolon, it's saying, hey, guess what? That part of the array is over. So it's not going to add it's not going to add this to that. So it's going to wait until this array is over before it proceeds on and treats this as a collection rather than a string. And then because it was a collection, I can, you know, rearrange the colors and not colors, the numbers here. Wow. I can rearrange things just because I have that working there. But anyway, So how this works is that line is over. Well, this is everything in the array, in that subarray. So that's its own portion of the array. That's another portion of the array. And then this is another portion of the array. And then this is yet another portion of the array. Yeah. So that's how that works. Just so you can see it visually, like what all that breaking down of all that stuff means, or how it could help you understand how this radical approach I'm using in pretty much every script that I write works. Now I can take this out. Was it worth the effort? Probably not, but you know, sometimes explaining or showing people what I do to be able to, you know, get rid of that one line altogether, it's pretty helpful for some people, I would assume. But anyway, yeah, so now at the end of the script I've got this and it'll export that. Like I said before in the other video, I could further reduce all this if I wanted to, and I really see no reason not to at this time, so I'm not going to do that. But, you know, just wanted to go over that, and I'm going to continue recording the video so that you can see some of the things that I do to think of logic. So yeah, at the end of the day, that's now like 3 lines and not like 10 lines all the way across the screen. And this one's like, you know, 1 line barely halfway across the screen, 2nd line, 3rd line. And then this is like, I could even further reduce this. So once I have the logic complete, I will shorten the lines in this manner that I'm showing you right now. Or at the very least, I don't like when it goes over that far. So what I'll do is I'll put that there. Unfortunately, I still have to, I mean, I don't have to do anything, but yeah. I like when things are neat and clean like that. When I first started writing, I was just kind of like, hey, let's mesh everything together so that people can't read it, and, you know, I don't know, I would do all this stuff and just, you know, cram everything together. And that's how most people write their scripts, and there's nothing wrong with that approach until, like, you know, you want other people to see it or read it or use it or learn something from it, or to give you helpful suggestions. So that's why that is the way that it is. Anyway, let me get back to what I was doing here. So let me just show you. Like, would you rather work with that? Would you rather work with that? This method here, you'll have to add all the programs that you want. So I mean, if you have one program, then I guess whatever, you could use this. But this is logic to create that array, and you know, you want to edit stuff. You could certainly do that a lot easier if you know more about programming in general. And then make your life a heck of a lot easier by just, you know that the output of each of those lines is going to wind up being something similar to that. So you have the logic for that. And it could very well be as many programs as you want it to be, should you change the size or the column or the row or whatever. There is a case to be made here that if I change that to 1 by 1, Well, it sure as hell isn't going to work anymore. So that's a problem that I'll focus on later on. But, you know, as far as where things are at right now, I like the way this looks. I would feel comfortable putting this into one of my scripts or modules. And I'm going to start working on a commandlet that can create all of this content dynamically, or at the very least, like all of that dynamically. And then at some point, I'll get to where I can add in the taskbar stuff, like right here. I can't remember what the name of string there was, but I did have. I tried to show it off the other day, and apparently I lost the original file that I had that changed the taskbar configuration, and that does seem to not remain the same. So, whatevs. By recording this. Yeah, I don't want to make these videos like an hour and a half long every single time, so I'm going to cut the video off now. I'll show you a little bit more about this stuff tomorrow, or what I've managed to put together from this logic here. Sometimes what I will do is I will make several attempts at doing something like this, and then I'll go ahead and say, you know what, screw that, and then I'll delete it like that. Of course, probably not great for my sanity when I try to find the solution that I wrote before. So I try to make an effort to put it on my repository right here. And looks like a couple of guys started the project. I have no objection to anyone going through any of these and, you know, offering suggestions or to a helping hand. Not all this stuff is complete. Some of the stuff that I really want to get around to is, well, for all intents and purposes, I think, yeah. So this is the PSD project. This is what Mikael Nystrom and Mikael Nystrom started this like a couple years ago, and then Johan and Mikael Nystrom, they worked on this project at FriendsofMDT. Can't say my communication with these guys has gone swimmingly, but I'm glad that they did this, because there were some things about Mr. Nyhouse's script that I didn't quite understand, and I don't know. I guess it's my job to finish it. Maybe it works the way that it is right now, but not. This is the problem that I have. If I go into here and I show you some of this stuff, I go into scripts. No, I don't want to go into one of those. I want to go into this right here. New web instance. So I'm going to copy and paste it. Now I might set my, I might want my scripts to be a bit cleaner than this, but this is, I find this to be quite excessive. I find this to be, even though it is open source, I understand this is a free project, and I understand that maybe these gentlemen feel that they have more important things to work on, but there's no consistency between the spacing of the equations there. So this tells me that this was all automatically generated. Yes, you have some comment-based help here. Like, why is I guess it was copying everything from the website. There we go. Jordan Benzing. I think he's like an SQL admin or something for some company, TrueSec or 2Pint. I haven't done too much research on Jordan, but as far as Johan and Mr. Nystrom. I actually read their book, Deployment Essentials, and I don't know. They make some strong suggestions with a lot of their work, but why is this not a program that allows you to choose whether you want to install the old MDT or the new MDT, and then include it in MDT by default? So, like, hey, you want to install the PowerShell delivery project for MDT? Well, now here's a toggle option, which is sort of the reason why I got into this. Is that several months ago, back in January, I was working with Mr. Nighthouse's original scripts, and it totally screwed up my production environment. I had to rebuild the images that I was working on for production side. I was doing development with it, but people were using the development side, and it totally messed some stuff up. I won't go into great detail about all of this, but suffice to say, I applaud the effort that they made to put this together. I have some seemingly more strict standards on how to write code, even though I've been doing this probably a fraction of the time that these gentlemen have been doing this. Yeah, I mean, look, this is going all the way across the screen, and you could say that I'm being a little picky about this, but, like, if anyone wants to know what any of that stuff does, or is, or what it affects, or what they can change to, be able to get the end result working, and I can tell you, that doesn't work. That's why it's commented out. But yeah, look, these are all similar commands, and this is what got me started on this, is that you could very easily just loop through all this stuff and then, set the parameter appropriately, and then, yeah, this is all written using script generator from IIS. And that's what that tells me right there. That nobody stopped to think about, like, hey, just because IIS says to do all of this, why would we go ahead and not clean it up or make it more coherent? And you get that, like, with the variable names and stuff, and that's cool. But I'll tell you what, my project does all of this stuff in like 88 lines, and I'll show you. So I've still yet to include some of the changes I've made since I last was working on this. I haven't had this able to push out any new images because I added a whole bunch of new features to it. So, like, I'll explain the process of what this does. What this does is it declares a bunch of namespaces so that it could self-validate the script if needed. It also declares a namespace for the access control and system management automation, so for PS credentials and message boxes and things of that nature. Or not message boxes, but like PS custom object. I could just, instead of having to type the full type name or typecast, I could use that. And also directory services. So, like, this will integrate with Active Directory. The problem with Active Directory is that if there exists a current domain controller and your server is not part of the domain, or let's say you use the MDT tool and you add it to the domain in the PXE environment, well, what it does is it uses the LDAP security protocol, and you have to type in a name and a password, and that name and password, apparently it's not checked. Like, you might be able to access the Active Directory, you might be able to log in, and you might be able to push an installation. Once you get to the desktop, it will reboot about 4 times and it'll say, oh, unable to join to the domain. So that is that's one reason why I don't like doing that in the PXE environment. You might as well just toggle off the add it to a domain feature, unless you are pretty damn sure that the service account that you made to install the operating system from the PXE environment, that it actually enables that the account cannot proceed to install MDT unless it has that permission, and you don't get that. You'll get to install the installation, but it won't stop it. It won't. Basically, it's broken and it needs to be fixed, and SCCM does a bit of a better job of that. But anyway, those are all the wrap commands that I replaced with my commandlet. That's all locales export ini. Access control list, access control object, collect graphics, so that gets the graphics for the GUI from my server, which is down at the moment. Collect registry, so that looks for installation path stuff. I'm not sure if you've seen that in the previous video, but this is pretty useful. You want to, like, you know, say collect so there it is. It looks through the registry path, and you can do that, and it'll return whatever you want it to return. I actually came up with, I had an idea for uninstalling software base that I kind of parsed and put together, but it also works for, you know, finding anything that might be installed. So, like, if that variable came back as null, then I would have it go out to the internet and then download, like, 7-zip or whatever. Or let's say that the display version wasn't up to par, so then it has to uninstall this version and then install a new version, and then sometimes those programs need to be rebooted. Like 7-zip won't, but MDT uses PowerShell, and you have to, like, close ISE to be able to do that. So that's kind of a pain in the neck. But you know, it the next few functions collect the SE root. So what this will do is it'll look for the registry path, and if it finds anything there, then it will return this this value. I may have to change where this is going, because I don't know, I just decided to put it there just cause. Probably dumb. I don't know. I mean, I don't think anyone writes a program or a manual on where to add stuff to their registry. It's kind of like, hey, go ahead and piss in the wind for all we care, you know? But perhaps I'm wrong about that. I just haven't been doing this long enough to know the correct procedure for that. But anyway, this will collect the graphics from the server that's not up right now. I did have one reaching out to the internet from another server. I actually have some of the graphics on my other repository, just so that you know, I can save some of the changes that I make to that repo. But yeah, I don't know. That collects that, and then it will inject it into this XAML. It'll create the folder for those graphics. It'll IWR or bits transfer them, and then yeah, things of that nature. What I really wanted to talk about was Johan and Nystrom's script. So this installs the dependencies for MDT. MDT is one of them. It's on this list right here. So these are all the dependencies. I don't install them all. And it looks through everything here. If it finds it and it's of a certain version, then it goes on. If not, then it's like, hey, guess what? You need to download it. And then not only does it download it, but it also installs it automatically. So I think that's pretty cool. It kind of removes a bit of the headache involved in setting all of this up. Then also, let's see here. Then it will install my template based on 7-zip, which I intend to re-include the whole instruction tree to installing all this, but For now I'm using 7-zip, and I do intend to get around to replacing that with the few dozen lines of code that create all of the files in my hybrid folder library. So some of this stuff is straight up Johan and Mikael stuff, like everything in scripts and templates, and the libraries are whatever I found like some notation within one of their scripts that said that you needed BCP 47 something.dll, so I put those there. But also let's see. So this part here, if you have a deployment share in your on there already, it will bypass everything prior to this, and then it will find the name, and if it finds multiple, then it'll come up with an option. It'll ask you to enter it in, and then it'll select that information, and then it'll install the entire thing. And the installation, it includes the DITS IIS stuff that I just showed you, but it's lower down. So that GUI will go through some logic, IEX string there. Here's how I did that. Rather than have each individual thing there, I did that. I would like to clean this part up. But basically all of this stuff, it's like the heart and soul of how this all works. Everything here gets sent to the registry, which is why that registry checker needs to find itself. And then I should probably remove that, because that's working, or at least working to some degree here. Provisionary name, network root, URI folder, SMB, the PS drive, and then the description. I might change how a lot of that works, but now to load the MDT module. I do have a module or a function above that looks for where MDT is installed, which if you want to look through all this stuff, certainly feel free. It's all open source, so there's nothing stopping you from doing that. This gets a Samba share. If it exists, then it will bypass it. If it doesn't, then it creates a new one using the variables that you just made. Get drive will get a PS drive. If it's null, then it will create a new drive. Same thing, if it already exists, it will bypass it. Now, once those things are successful, actually it also does, it will create the folder if it doesn't exist. If it does exist, then it'll just get that item. So you could actually stack the installation folder for Hybrid and the MDT server together if you wanted to, but I don't suggest doing that, because if you want to spin up multiple deployment shares or have a production and a development environment, then it makes sense to have the tools folder in a different spot. But anyway, this is the deployment share installer there, and then it will make it will set some registry variables that have all of that to your registry. It'll build the folder appropriately. I gotta go through and figure out how to get that to work accordingly, in one line rather than 5, and then it goes through and it will add all the stuff to the registry. That's all that right there. So this makes the paths in the registry, and then this makes the keys, or the values. Or this makes the keys. This makes the path, some of that makes the path, and that makes, the last one makes the key, and then this makes the values. So this is the switch that says, hey, you want to do old school, or do you want to be a new school badass like me? If you select MDT, it's just going to bypass all this stuff. But this is Michael Nystrom original installation script here down. I have heavily modified it, but you go through, figure out what works, what doesn't. I'm not going to explain all of his stuff unless you ask. And then now I did have Snappy Driver installer in here at one point. And I also had DISM++, but I removed both of them because I had a feeling that they had something to do with me getting hacked or screwed over these last few months. It's weird, right? Like, I do security engineering, and I still get hacked by people that have a lot more money and tools than me. So it's not a misnomer. It's not that I don't know what I'm doing either. It's that I've pissed off people that seem to, not want me to share the information that I do. It's not always a bad thing, but sometimes it is. Anyway, I'm going to continue. This will download the VMware tools for 86 and 64. I'm not going to explain everything here. I'm going to blast through it. This downloads the ISOs from Microsoft, or this makes the folder for the ISOs and the updates. This downloads, or this creates the path for the the Windows update. This creates a path for the ISOs, and then this downloads each of the ISOs. So you get the server 2016. Windows 10 x64 and then Windows 10 x86 1903. So it'll download those ISOs and then it will automatically split them, the WIN files, for Education, Home Pro, and that's what all this tagging here does. It will find the character array, or it will find the first available drive letter and then select it. And then it will mount to that drive. It will extract it, and then it will, populate all the information that it needs to, propagate correctly. And then this is the process where it exports those files. And because I'm pretty good at being able to do switching, or at least the logic switching, this whole block here basically I was trying to get everything to work with this one command right here. So like if I have okay, so regardless of whether it's the server tag or the x64, so that's going to be broken. I might have to go through to fix that. No, I don't remember which way it's supposed to go, but it's not supposed to be x64 for both of those. One of those is supposed to be... Wait a second, I'll fix it right now. 64. 64 is going to be ISO target 1. What you're looking at right here is basically me being able to pipe it through the same commands, regardless of whether your whatever image it is. And there's a reason for that. If I didn't do all of this, then you would have a lot of these commands that repeat themselves, and variables that repeat themselves. And sure enough, I mean, you look at it the way it is, and sure, I mean, it does still repeat itself a bit, but it repeats itself a heck of a lot more without all of this. It's basically offsetting the switches. I'll have to fix that later. I'm not worried about that right now. And this right here, this injects the information. So like, let's say you use this and you want all of your images to have your company name in it. Well, it will have that. And it will have the information and read it back to you on the screen as to where the Windows image came from, what version it is, when it was written, when it was modified, and that's what all of that needs. So, like, when you use this, you get the most up-to-date version of all of these programs, all of these ISOs, and you can even include the updates also, because that's what this section does right here. It'll slipstream any of the images or updates into the WIN files. I was trying to get them to, rather than to split each individual WIN file from... So, like, there's the one server image, database or data center, and then there are 6 client images, x86, x64, home, education, and pro. And the way the process works so far is it will download it'll work with each WIM file one at a time rather than all of them that are similar at a time. Like, I don't know, DISM does that. Well, this is DISM, but the problem is that if I concatenate those 3 files into one file and then I add all this stuff, who's to say that one of the updates that goes to education gets applied to home, and one that was supposed to go to pro gets installed, one that was supposed to go to home gets installed to pro. And you gotta make sure the stuff stays separate to some degree, because sometimes the updates, they're not cohesive or they're not correct. So that's why I have it doing it that way right now. Yes, probably a bit more complicated than it needed to be, and I do intend to get around to cleaning all this stuff up so it's a lot more cohesive. If I were to focus on each individual part and then just continually upgrade this one part, I wouldn't learn new tricks to make this a heck of a lot easier. So that's kind of why you'll see some of this code that I haven't changed for a few months, a couple months anyway. But I eventually get around to it. It's just, I don't know, I have to have a lot of luck and a lot of concentration to be able to figure out what I want to change or keep or not change and keep or change. I don't know, whatever. I'm just talking now. But this part here, we'll go over. Okay, so what all this is an applications template. If you want to take a look at it, see how it works, feel free. This is the part where it actually downloads everything, like a freaking boss or something, like that guy right there. That guy's pretty cool. I see him around a lot. The student among you, you may know where that is from. So anyway, now you get to this switch where it's like, hey, you want to install this freaking badass IIS bits server? And of course you're like, yeah, I am a badass, so I'm going to click yes, and then it's going to go ahead and do that. So all this here kind of explains everything. Now, this is where the PSD web instance installation begins, sort of. I had a different way of doing this. Now it'll check the features, it'll check for the installation state, and then if it's not installed, it'll install it, and then so on and so forth. It'll import the web administration module. It'll look for the services, and it'll enable them if they're not running. It'll create a custom site pool name account, so that will automatically have the correct rights or version ACL objects. Well, that's got to be configured below, but new web app pool, and then I have created ways of getting things to work correctly without having so many lines. I did get some of this from a video that I saw a few months ago, and on Chocolatey they had this script that was sort of, I don't know, it worked, but it was like, I don't know, the default password was like chocolate or chocolatey or something. And it wasn't until I saw this other video that this other guy released. He was like, hey, guess what? You probably want to change the default password for ASP. I was like, well, I sure as shit didn't see that in the actual explanation on the installation tool for Chocolatey. So you can add a disclaimer to Chocolatey all you want, but when you have a script that allows people to get hacked because you didn't tell anybody, hey, change the freaking password, well, what that tells me is that you glossed over that part. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about too much about Chocolatey, but all this is to spin up a website that you can start to use bits or IIS for, which is the main strong point of the PSD master project. And I think you can do it from regular MDT, but I haven't refined the script enough to get to that point. And as I learn other things elsewhere that needed to be done, then I find out that all of this stuff gets pushed further and further and further into the future. But I don't know, maybe I'm getting closer now. Now this is all functions for the imaging part. But yeah, let me just make sure that I address this here and now. So, you look at this, and yes, there's a bit of lines and a bit of verbiage, but there's a heck of a lot more functionality here than what you're seeing here. And despite how many extra things that I put into my script, the difference is night and day. In 2118 to 18, 16, and 2118. So it's like 300 lines, and then theirs is like 700. And most of my lines are just intentionally taking up more lines because I'm trying to make it easier to read and digest and learn from. And I think that matters. I saw some comments in their script that said, hey, let's get a hash table that kind of explains all this stuff. Whereas you see all this here, and you see a heck of a lot more services and features installed on their script. You get to see this, which has like a tenth or like a third of the features, and they could have very easily done some of the stuff that I've been doing to make that shorter or more digestible or easier to understand, but no, it doesn't say that. To do, make this a proper hash table list, to explain info next to it at the end, evaluate, or to install all sub features or whatever. If it's been several months since you've done that, it means one of two things. It means that you've already done that, or that you slap this together and you don't actually know how to write better code. Now I know that they do know how to write better code. So what I'm looking at here is intentionally, if anyone wanted to learn anything from this, you're left to like study it for some time here. But anyway, I think that's really all I wanted to talk about today was the Start-Menu layout that I'm still working on to try to make it dynamically buildable and scalable. And then also I'm going over some of what the Prosivion-Hybrid installation, I want to say it's an installer, but it's more of a provisioning because it does a lot of installation and modifications and stuff, and there are some conditions that need to be like this will add a DNS record so that you can access it, because if you don't do that, then you won't be accessing this over the internet if you needed to, which is kind of the point of doing all this, is setting up a library that I can access anywhere without actually needing my flash drive ever. That's the point of this. If I want to take my flash drive with me, that'll help, but keeping all this stuff up to date, having a thumb drive that's online all the time, and that keeps itself up to date, you can't really pay for something that does that. I mean, you certainly can, but there does not exist a tool other than really chocolatey to keep all that stuff up to date and to make sure that, you know, that when you install this stuff, that you're not getting cross-site scripted or sent off on some tangent with a DNS security attack. So what I mean by that, it's like if you go to google.com and you go to your computer sends a request to a DNS server, and the traffic to that DNS server is intercepted. And what happens is when you go to run traceroute, you'll see like 2 or 3 hops that have no information whatsoever. That's how I know that like my DNS traffic has been hacked in the past, and it might even still be. I try to use a website to do this traceroute stuff. So I am looking something up, so bear with me for a moment here. What the heck? Ah, here we go. Alright. I guess I'm not looking around on the internet. Sometimes I'll look at the firewall traffic and I see a lot of stuff I don't want to see. That's for sure. Alright. So that should be this website here. Yeah, this shouldn't take that long. That's how I know that my traffic is being intercepted. Okay. So right now, that's where the trail ends. Which, I don't know. Some of this stuff is helpful to do from a website, because if you do it from your own computer, you won't get a lot of this information. Especially if you think that that there are people watching what you're doing and stuff. You know, you make the case like why is my traffic going out to Germany? I don't get that. Shouldn't be going out to freaking Germany. I don't know anyone there. Nobody from Germany has any reason to be watching me or changing my traffic or anything of that nature. But yeah, I mean, this is, if you really get into the nitty gritty of firewall monitoring and traffic filtering, you might end up making your way across the world pretty quickly. But anyway, yeah, that's sort of the end result here of setting up a DNS server so that your DNS traffic can't be compromised, especially if you have the salt and NSEC installed on there. DNS security is very useful, and I will get around to explaining how to do that and automatically set it up. But for the time being, there's still quite a lot to explain. Perhaps in another video tomorrow I'll talk about the rest of the script here. But at any rate, I'm done for today. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a wonderful day.